So here's the story of how we got fresh fish tacos during basically a Kentucky blizzard. We'd been wanting fish tacos, but obviously Kentucky had not been having the best weather. But my husband and his friend decided to go crappie fishing, and when he brought home the fillets, we made those fish tacos. So I started with my homemade tortillas, and to make that, I do 2.5 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of baking powder, and I'm going to mix that together, and then I'm going to incorporate 1/3 of a cup of fat. Here I'm using coconut oil. That's what I use most of the time. And then to the coconut oil, I'm going to also add 2 tablespoons of butter. And you'll see I didn't feel like getting a knife to scoop the butter with, so I just used the back of the spatula to kind of wop that off. And so then you're going to use your fingers and incorporate the butter and the coconut oil with the flour mixture like if you were making biscuits. And then the way I like to test that is if I can kind of roll it and squish it into like a snowball that will hold, then I know that it is ready to add the water. And I add up to a cup of water until it forms together into a nice little dough ball, and then I let that rest. You want to let it rest so that the flour will fully absorb all that liquid. And then once it has done that, then I start cutting it and rolling it into tortillas. Now this recipe should make about 12 to 14 tortillas depending on the size that you like to make. And I'm not weighing them or anything, I'm just kind of parting them off here. And then I'm gonna get to rolling. So I just use a rolling pin and roll out my tortillas. I don't have a tortilla press. We looked into getting one, but the reviews weren't fantastic on most of them, and they said that they made the tortillas pretty thick, and we like a pretty thin tortilla. So I will just stick with rolling them, and I flour them as I roll them so that they don't stick to the rolling pin or to my butcher block countertop here. And it doesn't matter that they're a little oblongy, they still taste delicious. So once I get them all rolled out, then I start cooking them, and I just cook mine on a cast iron griddle pan here. I get the pan nice and hot, and then I lay them out and I cook them on each side. It just takes a few seconds on each side to get them cooked. And then after that, I got to work on the crappie. My husband had already cleaned them and they were cold. I had stuck some butter in a baking dish and got that melting in the oven, and then I filled it with the crappie fillets, and then I seasoned it with some Weber kicking chicken, which is what's going on right here, and then just some salt and pepper. And I only did this one tray, and I should have done two. We devoured this. It did not go as far as we were hoping. And so then I got to cutting up some of the sides. So I worked on some lettuce to go on to the tacos, and then I got to mixing up basically a guacamole, so some avocado, a lime, and an onion, and I got that mixed up to go on top of our tacos also. And so after I got the avocado mixture mixed up, I got to work on the rice. Now for rice, I like to use jasmine rice, and I'm measuring it off here into this strainer so that I can rinse the rice first. I use a 1 to 1.5 ratio of the rice to the liquid when I'm cooking the rice. So if I do a cup of rice, I'm going to do 1.5 cups of liquid. And the liquid here that I'm using is just some chicken stock. So I'm going to measure that out and put it in here. So when I do the rice, I put it on the stove with no lid and bring it to a boil. And once it's boiling, I turn it down to low and put the lid on. And then it just kind of sits there on low until it is done. It gets nice and fluffy, which you will see here. It's so yummy. And then once this rice was done, I just added some lime and some cilantro. I didn't want real heavy flavor on this rice because the crappie had such good flavor. This just needed to be a nice little addition to it. So I'm just going to fluff it with the fork, and then I'm going to add the lime and the cilantro and kind of stir that in, put the lid over it, and then it will keep until we are ready to eat. You can see it nice and fluffed there. And then I took the meat thermometer and measured and got the correct temperature for the crappie before I finished cooking it, and then we plated up with the tortillas and then rice, and then the crappie on top of that, and then some of the guacamole, and then the lettuce, and then I mixed up a little sauce. I think it was mostly sour cream and some hot sauce and some cilantro, nothing fancy, just a little sauce to go on top of it, and they were delicious. Such a fun little treat for winter.